Story 1. There doesn't seem to be enough coverage of the protests. I didn't even know about it myself until a quick Google search. I think, honestly, the only way I see it getting any sort of attention is if something drastic happens that unanimously angers people and more people join. Story 2. It is not a bad thing by any means, but never had a chance to be effective. The timeline was too short, and there is no centralized organization or widely agreed upon list of demands. The whole idea seemed to be, let us go protest, which is fine, but it does nothing to actually challenge power or send a clear message. People seem to think media has been trying to quash it or something, but there is really just not much to report on. There were only a couple hundred people at my state's capital, according to the news. Story 3. I have heard very little about the 50,501 protests. The name kind of sucks. I hate that it's on a random Wednesday. It was organized on very short notice. And there's a lack of focus. What's being protested? The immigration and customs enforcement raids? Elon Musk's involvement with the Treasury? Trump's stance on Gaza? The whole administration as a whole? Story 4. It's a start. I came of age between 1965 and 1975, and it took hundreds of protests, some of them involving 200,000 people, to effect change. It's probably too soon right now, but things are moving fast, and it won't be too soon very soon. Story 5. If I did not use Reddit, I probably would not have known it was even a thing, but I am not surprised people are protesting due to how things have gone for a very long time now. It is just depressing how divided this country has become, and it is probably going to get worse before it gets better, unfortunately. However, I still look forward to the day when the United States will actually be a united country. It will take a lot of work to get to that point, but I believe it will happen eventually, regardless of how bleak things are at this point in time. Story 6. My city has 1.9 million people, and 200 of them showed up at the courthouse to protest. In my opinion, people are making it easy for the government to just wait for this to pass. Story 7. I wanted to go to mine, but I have to work. I can't protest on Wednesdays, sadly, but I'm proud of them. I'm in Iowa, so we on the progressive side have to work extra hard. Story 8. Kind of bizarre seeing so many people talk about low turnout. Denver had thousands of people and a fairly consistent flow of people entering and exiting. Story 9. I think it's good for people to show their support, but I would warn against burning yourself out in the beginning because that's what they want. We have to be in this for the long haul and start caring about strategy. There are a lot of liberals that, for whatever reason, would rather appear to be right about a subject instead of actually winning an election. You will find no liberal discussions talking about the real issues in the party and why we lost. If the election were held next week, we would undoubtedly lose again because the majority of the party refuses to believe there's anything wrong. We'll nominate another non-viable establishment candidate like Elizabeth Warren, and we will lose again. Story 10. I don't mind it even if I don't agree with it. It's your right and why I'm proud to be American. What I don't like is stopping freeways and jumping on cars. Story 11. I saw it come up on Blue Sky, and I went to the one in New York City. Felt nice to be doing something, and I'm thinking of doing it again. Something has to change. It's just wild to me that Elon Musk seems to be allowed to just take financial data without any real oversight. Story 12. They are protests, all right, but they are not going to change anything in the political route that Trump is taking. History tells us that about 90% of large protests lead to nothing. Unless it really, really hurts the country financially or is so controversial that literally everyone is protesting and nothing is happening in the country anymore. Story 13. It's a one-day protest with almost no support or marketing outside of Reddit. I fully support the protests, and I hope they continue after this and continue to pick up steam. But a one-day protest in the middle of the week was never going to be enough. Story 14. I just left the one in my city. It was pretty good as far as protests go. A lot more people showed up than I thought I would see, probably around 400 or so, I'd guess. I saw someone I knew, and we were talking about calls to action going forward. Protests are good and all, but that has to be the beginning, not the end. Unfortunately, we're kind of in a wait-and-see type of situation as far as real action, although we can always contact legislators and let them know what we think. The 5 calls application is going to be super helpful for that. I think it's a great start. People are angry, worried, frustrated, and being able to feel like we're doing something while we wait is helpful, at least for me. As others have said, I do think, well, hope that momentum will build from here. Story 15. I'm all for people peacefully protesting whatever they want. As far as this specific protest, I think literally nothing will happen as a result, and by next week, the few people that have even heard of 50,501 will have forgotten. Any protest like this has the same problems. Ask who the leaders are and get 50 different answers. Ask what the goals are and get 100 different answers. It's really easy to ignore a protest when even the protesters can't agree on what realistic goals they want to accomplish. Story 16. First off, I'm happy that everyone was able to protest and not have any violence that I've heard of on either side. Second, I think it was poorly planned, in the middle of the week basically and during work hours. Lastly, get a public relations company to help. Looking just at Reddit posts from multiple states, most attendees appeared to be white from most pictures. I'm not saying that was the case in person, but optics matter. Final option, I do believe we as people have more in common than what is fed to us. Look after and help your neighbors no matter what race, religion, or political affiliation. I hope we can all stop focusing on our differences and come together as decent people. Both political sides are guilty of this, but we are not that easily defined as people. People have many sides, but we are so quick to condemn those who don't agree 100%. Everyone can do better. Story 17. Everyone should take note of how little they have heard about this. Just check out the subreddit. There were thousands of people at capitals across the country. It does not matter who you vote for. Everyone should be asking themselves why this is receiving so little news coverage. In my own state, this was the biggest thing to happen today by exponential magnitudes. For frame of reference, the local news source's top story was about state lawmakers discussing policy to roll back daylight saving time. If that does not tell you what effort is being made to ignore these by domestic mainstream media, I do not know what else to say. Story 18. 100% delighted. Thanking them. As a federal employee, it's felt like we're carrying this alone. Like we're struggling to keep our oath to care for the Republic and her people, and the rest of the world would prefer we just die. This is the first time I've seen anyone outside of my circle stand up and say no. Taking care of our fellows is important. This nation is worth fighting for. I know tomorrow will be hard, and Friday, and Saturday and Sunday, and then we start again. But I saw a break in the storm today, and my load doesn't seem so heavy. At least for today. Story 19. They are free to protest. My only opinion is that they have poor optics. I haven't seen serious legislation pass because of poor optics. These days it's just virtue signaling. Story 20. While I am glad to see Americans protesting, the logistics and speed of this spell outside influence to me. My local news channels covered them, and there seemed to be a good turnout for the protest itself. I am just curious who organized it and paid for it, etc. Story 21. These people are worthless and just like to protest. They spent the whole campaign calling Biden Genocide Joe and crashing Kamala's rallies. Now Trump is president and doing exactly what they were told would happen. And they deserve to get it good and hard. Story 22. As someone who has been at a lot of protests, it is not surprising at all that there is not much media coverage. They wait like vultures until something bad happens, whether or not it is at the hand of protesters, and then everyone who is not there can be outraged at the incredibly violent protests because that is the media narrative every single time. This makes the media complicit and to blame for how we keep ending up here in the first place. Story 23. Protesting is a constitutional right. Even if you don't agree with the protest, it is still a right. If you only want certain ideals to be worth protesting about, you are missing the point of a constitutional right. Story 24. The fact that I had heard nothing about it until now is a good indication of how it is going. Also, who goes to these things? I am not taking paid time off for something like that. Hard pass. Story 25. As long as protests don't involve destroying businesses, blocking roads, or harming innocent people, I have no issue with them, even if I don't agree with the cause. Everyone has the right to voice their opinions, as long as it's done peacefully and without infringing on others' rights. Story 26. The day people lose the right to peacefully protest is a dark, dark day indeed. I am simultaneously surprised and not surprised by how little coverage this is receiving anywhere. Story 27. I'm from Hong Kong. We had a protest with over 2 million people. The peaceful protest didn't accomplish anything. Soon we realized how despicable the police are. They don't have a conscience. But then again, China also mixed in some enforcers from the mainland. Don't be surprised if there are moles who instigate and escalate, only to give the police an excuse to squash the protests. Story 28. Everybody reading the comments and realizing how absolutely infested with propaganda bots Reddit is now. If it weren't for Reddit, I wouldn't have even known about this. Give me a break and fix your faulty algorithm. Story 29. It's just Reddit in real life, and the Democrats are doubling down on all the things that lost them the election. They have lost their way, and they are all trying to save themselves. Story 30. It's being ignored by the mainstream media because the numbers are low. Contrast with the George Floyd protests, and you might notice a small difference in attendance and intensity. And contrast that with some Martin Luther King Jr. rallies back in the day, and then you will get an idea of what protest really looks like when you have the numbers. These protests were so poorly organized that I didn't even hear about them until yesterday. Had a couple of hundred at the state capitol here, laughing out loud. Not much of a protest. I rallied more than that myself once against a veterinarian that was killing pets. Story 31. Everyone has a right to protest as long as such protests remain peaceful and are conducted within state law. I don't support a lot of what they stand for, but I support their right to peacefully protest. Story 32. I also only saw it on Reddit yesterday. I was like, wait, tomorrow? Usually something ambitious like that has more lead time. That said, great work and kudos to anyone that made it out. I think the simple solution is for this protest to take place literally every day at every capital at a specified time. That way everyone can make it. I think that could gain a lot of traction. Story 33. They should be bigger. Anything we can possibly do legally to stop Trump must be done. He is a danger to our country not seen in many years. He and his supporters absolutely cannot be given even basic human respect and must be stopped. Story 34. It is too early for any real changes to have actually affected anyone, really. Later down the road, if what people are saying is going to happen, we might see a lot more protest spirit, especially over the price of eggs and too many fat leopards to boot. Story 35. I was there for the one in Salem. It was a decent turnout. It probably will not change many minds, but it is good at least to make sure the government officials in all states see that the people do not like what Trump is doing, as they are basically the last line of defense as far as maintaining a proper functioning democracy goes. If officials consistently refuse to abide by unconstitutional or otherwise illegal decrees, it constrains how much the Trump administration can dismantle. Story 36. Didn't seem super organized, but I watched the live feed in my state, Kentucky, and it looked like they had a pretty good crowd. I couldn't go because I had to work. Story 37. I am trying to be a happier person, but cannot stop thinking about how many of those people protesting did not even go out and vote in November or still will not vote in 3.5 years. Story 38. If you are of voting age and didn't care to vote on the issues, you shouldn't be protesting in the streets disrupting people's lives. Change is made at the ballot box, not at busy intersections. Story 39. I don't care as long as they aren't illegally blocking roads. That's not protesting. You have a right to protest as long as it doesn't impede others' daily lives. Story 40. I went to the one in Austin. Even met a nice Canadian couple who I thanked for coming out, even after we were mean to our neighbor. We need the help. Gave me hope. I'm not alone in my desire for empathy and community. I'll go to every protest I physically can. Story 41. I don't understand why the Mexicans in Los Angeles are spray painting buildings and are fighting with police officers. I was watching a live stream of different angles and saw these two events happening all day. It's ridiculous, but that is the nature of these pointless events. Holding these events in downtown Los Angeles is just plain asinine. Story 42. Freedom of assembly. part of what actually made America great. People don't protest as much because they can't. Poor employment protections, limited paid time off, low wages, and healthcare tied to employment drastically diminish people's ability to get out in the streets. I think this is the thing that other countries either forget or don't realize. Lack of organization is an issue as well, but I'm glad at least something is happening. It takes time to build plans of action and then actually execute them, so it's a start. Story 43. I've been watching this since the 1960s. Nothing changes. This will accomplish exactly nothing besides making you feel like you're being heard. You're not, but good on you for trying. It didn't then. It didn't during the Occupy movement. It won't now. Those weed-smoking, free-love hippies protesting in the 1960s and 1970s. Boomers. Most of the Occupy crowd now have kids, jobs, and mortgages. Love the signs, though. Clever. Pointless but clever. Story 44. They are pointless and uncoordinated. All they will do is cause a nuisance and get nothing done. Remember Occupy Wall Street? Yeah, neither does anyone else.